All right, everybody. How's everybody doing? My name's Geoff Livingston. I'm CEO of Generative Buzz.
Geoff, and I'm Johann Detweiler. I'm Senior Director of Compliance for stackArmor.
I thought you were Senior Director of AI Compliance.
I think we're throwing that AI title in for today. You know, it's apropos for the conference.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. What have you thought of the conference to date?
I mean, it's absolutely amazing to see everyone kind of come together with the same mindset, trying to figure out and solve some of the same problems. I think it's really, really cool. You know, it's definitely a step in the right direction.
So, with that in mind, it's been quite a topic at the conference. It's relatively 3 weeks old. What do you think of the executive order? I guess it's Order 14110 about implementing AI. It was pretty wide-ranging. You want to break it down?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's a step in the right direction. It's the government trying to look at this in a meaningful, actionable way, put together steps that they can take to address, you know, the potential threats, the potential risks around AI, but also recognize that there's simply no way the government cannot leverage this new technology. I mean, we have to be a part of it. We have to utilize it. It's so powerful. It has so much potential, but there is definitely inherent risks. And you know, it's a well-written executive order. It's lofty. It's got a lot of really high goals, but I think they're actionable if we take the right steps and think about it reasonably, which I think is kind of what we're doing here today.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pragmatic talk about how to implement. Speaking of, I think one of the more obvious mandates in there is the NIST AI risk framework, management framework. Can you discuss that and how agencies should think about that, perhaps?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So the new NIST AI RMF, again, it's a good idea because they've broken it down something relatively complex to things that I think agencies understand, which is the NIST RMF, right? Every agency is very familiar with that. They've utilized it through FSMA, they utilize it through FedRAMP. And I think the government kind of taking the idea of AI, breaking it down and you know, introducing new concepts, but still through that sort of security control mentality was a really great way of doing it. I think they've kind of looked at the risks as a whole and they said, you know, what is something that our agencies across the board are familiar with? How can we break these down into bite-sized pieces? Let's use those security control concepts and kind of look at the risks and break them down into new actionable ways of addressing them. So I was really impressed by it. It was a good first step.
Excellent. And one of the more lofty goals in there was to hire a chief AI officer for the major agencies. What's your thinking on that? Do you actually see it having a significant impact? And what's the realistic reality of maybe having all these people hired by end of the year like they had suggested?
Yeah, I mean, this is one area where, you know, I would like to see the government maybe look internally, maybe look at the contractors that they work with, the people that they already have to see if they can't leverage some of the talent that's already there. I think there's a lot of people that have a very deep understanding, and to just immediately approach this as it's an entirely new position, it's something, you know, bigger than we already have, may be the wrong idea. I think you can get people, you know, like myself that are familiar with compliance, engineers that are more familiar with hands-on, and sort of leverage those together so that maybe you're not creating a single person that fulfills that position, but you are fulfilling the requirements of that role through looking internally at what you already have.
Sounds pretty good. And I like that view of looking inside, having been a government contractor in my day as well. Speaking of, when I worked at USPS, there was a mandate and an executive order for zero trust. I was working in the Chief Information Security Office at the Postal Service. So, I mean, obviously we did our best to get it implemented. We missed the deadline. I think we weren't the only agency to have that challenge. With this executive order, do you think it's realistic that the agencies will meet the deadlines given election year, funding challenges, on and on and on and on?
You know, there's...
Tough question.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough question. I mean, I think that they're going to miss the deadlines because there's a lot going on in the world right now. But I think everyone is approaching this in the mentality that we need to take actionable steps forward. This is not something that is idealistic that we cannot move on immediately, right? We need to implement AI. We know there are risks associated with it. So I think what's different is that we're not trying to just come up with one single framework or one single approach to addressing this. This time, I really feel like the government is taking input from industry, looking at some of the mistakes they may have made in the past and saying, how can we break this down into more actionable steps? And so, do I think some deadlines are going to be missed? Yes, 100%. But do I think that we're going to start seeing actionable steps that will get us in the right direction? Absolutely. And I think conferences like this are proof of that. I think we've seen representatives from the government here today. I think we've all interacted with them. And it just seems like this time around, they're more willing to participate with industry. And I think that's really nice to see.
That's good. It's good. And given stackArmor's perspective, and given that we've had kind of a lofty conversation about AI, let's get down to some brass tacks and practical advice. Current risk assessments and authorization methods to identify and address risk inherent in AI. Yeah. How would you approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our sort of thinking is that you can leverage the controls that you have in place and think about them in regard to AI. So for example, when you think about your audit controls, so, right now you audit security events, you create logs. Well, you can utilize that same control to address AI. Start auditing your inputs to your training models. Start auditing all of the exports of the scripts coming out of it. So, you don't necessarily need to flip everything on its head. What I would suggest is take your baseline of controls and think about how they can be applied to AI. That way you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. You don't want to have to, immediately on Monday go to work and say, I have an entirely new framework, 700 new controls that have to be met. Instead, think about what you already have and what can be manipulated to meet some of the requirements around AI.
That makes a lot of sense. Before we move to end, I have one random question, but is there anything you would add on AI before I give you that?
So I think I missed add on to AI.
Oh, is there anything you would add on the AI perspective that you would?
Oh, absolutely. I think, again, this conference is really representative of the need to bring all of the groups together. Our keynote speaker this morning from OpenAI really pointed out something that was really interesting, is that they built OpenAI to better the world.
Right.
And, 10 years ago, that might have seemed like a lofty statement, but I think we're all really seeing it play out, that ChatGPT and OpenAI have massive benefits for everyone. But I think everyone needs to be involved in managing the risk and having input into it. And again, everything that I've seen, it seems like people finally understand that, and that's a really cool thing to see, is that everyone is going to be involved in making this something that betters the world.
Sounds good. So Jonathan, here's my random question for you. If you had to pull out your crystal ball, what's your AI prediction for 2024?
So I think widespread adoption throughout the public sector. I think without a doubt, we're already seeing a lot of movement towards that. I think kind of continued conferences like this, continued bringing together of the various industries to really address the risks, think about it at a very high level. What does AI represent for everybody? What are the actual risks, and how can we address them in a way that's meaningful, safe, secure, reliable? I feel like that's going to be the move in 2024, is just wholesale adoption with risk in mind.
I think based off all the questions and thinking that I've seen, you're spot on with that one.
Right on. I appreciate it, Geoff.
All right, brother. Thank you, Jonathan.
Hey, it's a pleasure.